Thanks everybody for jumping on BNB Investing this week for this month. We are definitely looking forward to talking about property setup today. We're going to do a deep dive into that. For those of you that are new to REI USA, this is a sponsored monthly meeting with REI USA. These meetings are recorded, and you can go back and view them on the platform as needed for all the different meetings that occur on a monthly basis on REI USA. It's the same thing, everything's recorded. And so if you have to jump off or you're not able to make it one month, just know that those are going to be archived on the platform. So like I mentioned, we're going to jump into one of the things that it requires a lot of detail and definitely is an important part of this business. For me, it's kind of on front of mind. We've actually, in the last 30 to 45 days, set up about 6 different properties here in Atlanta, mostly 4 and 5 bedroom homes. We're in the process right now of setting up 4 one-bedroom units in Midtown Atlanta that's a part of a quadplex. And then we've also, in the last several weeks, set up 4 properties in Tampa, Florida, for our Tampa business. And so this is definitely something that that our team over here is currently working on. And like I said, mentioned kind of front of mind. So that's one of the things we're going to cover. Feel free to throw any questions out in the chat if you have any specific questions as we go through this. I know some of you are already doing short-term rentals. You are already setting up properties and already kind of familiar mostly with the process. And so, I'm going to kind of cover this in 2 different pieces. One is really as it applies to the one-off, like one property, but really how you get to be scalable and be able to ramp up. Because as you guys know, once you set that property up, you get your listing pictures done and throw it into your automated process, you're basically off to the races to generate rental revenue every month. And so this is an important part of the business to make sure that you get your property set up the correct way in the beginning. What tends to happen is if you don't, you're going to find out from the first few guests, which will definitely impact your reviews and not something that you want to learn through that initial first 1 or 2, 3 reviews so that you can, get those negative reviews in the beginning to not get you off to a good start. So it's a critical part of the process. And so, there's a couple different things with the property setup. You've obviously got to stage the property and set it up for your furnishings and decor items. And so we'll talk about that. You do have like a laundry list of supplies that you need to get set up in the beginning. As most of you probably know, the kitchens are going to be fully operational, and you're typically going to provide bare essentials for somebody that's coming in to be comfortable during their stay. We're going to talk about the electronics. One of the things that makes this business very scalable are some of the electronics that we use in all of the listings that help us kind of manage and do a lot of things remotely. And then more importantly, the final review and punch list. A lot of the properties that we are onboarding and getting set up are recent rehabs. So recent rehabs and or new construction. And so you don't want to wait for somebody to check into your listing and the very next day struggling, rushing to try to get to a meeting, and they've got cold water coming out of the shower instead of hot water. And so little simple things like that are basically critical, to making sure that you're off to a good start. So staging the property, one of the things, to run this like a business, and again, with the mindset of being scalable, is you want to make sure that you have some consistency. There's a lot of differences in opinion about bed size. So for me, if I've got a 5-bedroom home and we're putting 5 beds and a sleeper sofa, then I'm going to try to standardize as best as possible. There is the dual elephant in the room as far as objectives go. You do want to maximize your number of people that you can sleep in each home to make sure that you're maximizing that space. And so I'm not suggesting that you never will do bunk beds or full beds or twins or king size beds. There are cases where the room size, for example, we have some homes where we have a larger room. We might put 2 queen beds in there instead of 1. Or the room might be smaller and requires putting a full bed. So it kind of depends on the layout and the floor plan. But as a general rule for consistency, it's usually best to have the queen standard size. Also for the cleaning team and the laundry team that comes in, if you have multiple different size sheets, it's very difficult to maintain and be able to keep up with, getting those things changed out quickly. And so the fact, if you have the ability to, I would default to doing all queen, including the queen sleeper sofa, so that you have a standard size for all of your linens, to be able to have operational optimacy on swapping out and being able to turn those properties. Work desk area is definitely something that you need to make sure that you have in the listing. When you create your listings, they're going to be an option for you to say if it's a work-friendly listing. And so you might have a lot of people, obviously now during COVID, that have recognized they can work remotely. And so that work desk area is definitely something you want to try to implement into your staging process to make certain that you've got a comfortable area that's able to do that. Now, that doesn't mean you need to have a whole separate office set up. You could simply have in the corner of the living room and or a master bedroom, you can add a desk and a chair, and that's your work area. And so it doesn't have to be a private room of sorts, but you want to make sure that you try to incorporate or include that into the staging list. Obviously, personal items, you want your setup to be very much kind of neutralized as far as somebody being comfortable to go stay there, but you don't want to have too many things moving around, too many things going on for the obvious reasons. Not only does it look cluttered and not clean and attractive, but it's also more stuff for the cleaners to keep up with. Keep in mind the cleaners are not only going to be cleaning, but they're also doing an inventory check and property inspection in between each guest stay. And so that's an important thing to kind of limit those types of items that tend to just kind of get in the way. Pictures and decor. Now, the pictures and decor that you use are a very high part of the list. So in terms of budget, I would definitely allocate at least 20 to 30% of your budget on pictures and decor. When you think about 90% of the decisioning is made off of the listing pictures when people are trying to book. If you've got kind of, pictures and decor that don't look quality or, higher end, then it's not going to differentiate you from some of the other listings. And so you always want to try to step it up as far as the pictures and decor go and help to differentiate. The same thing goes for furnishings, right? Living room, setup, even the beds. You don't want to have, and we've had houses that we've staged with all IKEA furniture. So I don't want to say IKEA is not a good option, especially if it's a smaller floor plan. But you always want to try to have furnishings that differentiate you again from the other listings and kind of give that uniqueness and character versus it being more of a vanilla or generic look. And so that's something you want to pay close attention to. Dining area, obviously if you've got a 3-bedroom home and you're doing a sleeper sofa, so you're going to be sleeping up to 8 people, you want to make sure that you've got comfortable dining enough to be able to handle that number of people. And so always kind of keep that in mind. If you have a house for even 4 or 5 bedrooms, if you've got a larger dining room, to make sure that you're putting in the appropriate number of chairs to accommodate a large group like that. Because a lot of times there will be large groups that are booking, and it's not going to be good, if they don't have the ability to kind of all be comfortable and be able to do that. Let me take a quick break and see if anyone has any quick questions before I keep jumping through. We had a few more people join. So if you have any questions, if you want to throw it in the chat box. And if for those of you, because I noticed there's several folks on here that are already doing short-term rentals themselves, if there's anything I mentioned that you think I messed out on the staging, feel free to mention, or if there's any things that you guys do that are different or can kind of add value, if you want to throw that in the chat as well, that would be helpful. All right, so what is the easiest property to get into your first Airbnb or short-term rental business? Easiest type of property, okay. That's a question from Jonathan. So it's a little bit off topic because we're talking about setting up properties, but I'm happy to address that question. When you say easy, the logical starting point is smaller is easier to get started, right? So if you start off doing a 1 or 2 bedroom condo, before you branch out into the larger homes, it's usually good to kind of get your initial one done with a smaller property like that. Obviously, the difference between staging 1 bedroom and 5 bedrooms is not only going to cost a lot less, but it's also going to be a lot less labor intensive in terms of the setup. And so when you're starting out, it's probably good to start out with a smaller property, even a studio, to kind of start the process. Let's see, Ingo, hey Ingo, how you doing? He's got a question. Is there a good source to find quality furniture at competitive prices? So when we first started, and like a lot of folks, you can do a lot of bargain shopping, Facebook Marketplace, estate sales, things of that nature. We used to use a lot of furniture outlet options, because as you start to scale, you want to be able to move quickly. And, estate sales and Facebook Marketplace and kind of bargain hunting is great, but it burns up a lot of time. And so if you've got literally 30 days, in the last 30 days, we had 3 large homes, I'm not going to have the luxury and the time or the resources to go bargain hunt for the furniture that's needed for those 3 or 4 homes. So engage with some local furniture outlet places that can give you quantity and that can deliver with reasonable delivery fees. And then that way your setup becomes, your first day of setup is going to get that furniture delivered, all the larger items in the home, and then you can kind of go from there to add on for the property setup. So, it's a little bit different in each local market, but we've been able to find some success with some of the, what they call kind of outlet furniture places that have a lot of volume and don't have any issues with being able to deliver things quickly. So let's see, Deborah has a question. When setting your Uplift budget, furniture, furnishings, how do you determine what this dollar amount is? Okay, that's a good question. And so it looks like you're using the word Uplift budget. I'm meaning that to mean, kind of higher quality, I guess, or upfit. When you're setting your upfront budget, maybe? I don't know, maybe I'm missing that word. How do you determine what the dollar amount is? So furniture slash furnishings, like I mentioned, if you engage on a consistent basis with some of the furniture outlet companies, you can very quickly hang your hat on, an end table is going to be a decent one's going to be $100. A lamp is going to be $50. A nice headboard or platter will say that you're going to be at $200 for your end tables, another $100 for your lamps, so you're at $300, $400 for the headboard, so you're at $700. We have a pretty good mattress distribution that's in the $250 range, and so now you're at $950 per bedroom, and you might as well bump it up to $1,000. And so when you've got your furniture outlet options and you kind of know what your regular inventory is going to look like, you can kind of peg your budgeting based on that, so that you can very quickly, as you're looking at new projects, be able to come up with what that starting point budget is. And so knowing that, typically you're going to be able to get a lot of volume for that, if that makes sense. All right, so feel free to keep putting any questions in the chat as I jump through here, and then that way when we come back out, if there's, we can address those right away. So let's see. All right, so, just in general, like I mentioned, it's good to make sure that you've got all the essential items, for each property, that make the self-check-in process possible for the electronic locks. Like I mentioned earlier, you want a fully functional kitchen. So again, with a lot of people that are kind of doing longer stays now, and with the travel being a little bit different, everybody's not going out to the restaurants every night. So it's very important to have your kitchen fully stocked with all the cooking utensils, pots and pans, the correct number of dishes, correct number of glasses, coffee cups, etc. Because that is going to be something that that you will get a question about if you have your guests check in and they don't have enough things to cook a meal. Washer and dryer are not typically mandatory. They are definitely a good plus, especially since we are seeing the average stay pre-COVID was 3 to 5 days. That average stay is now a little bit higher in the 5 to 7 day range, so you're getting a lot more people that are 10, 20 days and so on. And so to have the flexibility to have a washer and dryer there is definitely a plus. We actually, in some of our properties that we don't have washers and dryers in, we have a laundry service, like a wash and fold service, as an option for the guests as well, which is usually good to offer. Dishwashers are usually, we've got, one of our apartments in our quadplex is literally like 250 square feet, very small studio apartment, and it still yet has a dishwasher in it. So to the extent you can accommodate that type of stuff, it's definitely good to have. Again, because people that are using Airbnb and VRB on HomeAway are planning on spending some time there and being in the kitchen. Stating the obvious, the Wi-Fi is definitely an essential item. I would not cut corners here. So if you've got multiple apartments or multiple units in the same location, like we're doing this quadplex, I'm happy to have a designated Wi-Fi service for each unit, even though I could probably get away with sharing one router for each unit apartment, maybe get 2 different services. It's just not worth, for what it costs, in the 60 to 70 buck range per month, to be able to have that confidence that you will be able to not have any issues with streaming or people that are doing Zoom meetings or working from the listing. And so the Wi-Fi is definitely something that you don't want to skimp on. TVs, so we actually, as a standard rule of thumb, and I know a lot of folks that do this as well, smart TVs are pretty reasonable nowadays, so you don't really need to do cable and have a monthly cable expense. And so again, going back to making sure you've got a good Wi-Fi bandwidth, you can definitely get a smart TV. And in a lot of local markets like the city of Atlanta, city of Tampa, You can do HD antennas, where it's kind of a free HD channels for the local channels. And then you've got the streaming options for Netflix, Prime Video, Hulu, and so on. And so nowadays, it's really not a requirement, especially when you can access a lot of the different options via YouTube Live or some of the other apps that are out there. It's going to save you on that monthly cable expense. Bathroom essentials, as a standard, we typically provide travel size shampoos and soaps and lotions and body wash. Again, for the convenience factor of it, obviously for guests that are staying the longer term, they're kind of on their own, but we give them enough to kind of get them through 3 or 4 days. And, it's again, a good convenience thing to kind of add to your supplies list. Bedroom comforts, you want to be very cautious or careful when you're selecting your mattresses, your pillows. At the end of the day, it's a big part of somebody's stay, and so you don't want to go with the $2 or $3 pillows. You want to kind of get the $6 or $7 pillows. Make sure they're firm enough that they're going to last. Another important thing to mention here to be a part of your budget is the not only the bed bug protectors, but you want to do mattress pads. You want to do pillow protectors. That way you're definitely going to be washing, the pillowcases, but you also want to have pillow protectors there as an added step as well. So that's an important part. The coffee maker, you want to make sure, again, just for the convenience factor, it's very easy to add one coffee maker into each of your listing units that you're setting up. We like to do Keurigs when we can, especially for some of the smaller units. And it's not that expensive to be able to provide them with, 4 or 5 pods to have for each stay. And again, it goes back to that convenience factor. So that's something that's really good to add. So, when it's all said and done, your supplies list when you get started are going to be a big, a good chunk of your budget. So, we've talked about the furniture and the decorations and pictures, but the supplies list that's going to get you fully up and running is also is a very important part. And it's probably going to represent about 30% of your budget typically. So towels and linens, again, to run this like a business, you're going to need to have ample supply. And so most of us that are doing this on a larger scale, we're not having our cleaners come in and do the laundry each time they get the listing ready. And so in the beginning, we typically get 4 sets of everything, right? So 4 sets of sheets, 4 sets of towels. We usually have, at a minimum, 3 to 4 towels set out in each bedroom or for each sleeping arrangement. So that includes the sleeper sofa. And so when you do the math, let's say it's a 3-bedroom home and you're doing 3 sets in each bedroom. So you're up to 9. If you got a sleeper sofa, then you're going to add another 3. So you're up to, 12. And so now to do one setting, you're at 12 towels. Well, you need to do a whole nother backup set so that when the cleaners come, they have that to put out. So now you're at 24. You need to also have another backup set for when the laundry service is closed on weekends or for holidays. So now you are up to 34 or 36. And then I usually do a 4th backup just for, the stuff that happens throughout the times. You're going to have things that will get stained that you won't be able to get cleaned. And so, that can add up pretty quickly. And it goes back to, again, you don't want to get the cheapest towel that's out there, like at Sam's or Mainstay. You want to try to get good quality so that you can, definitely, because it's going to be washed so many times, keep up with the wear and tear on the towel. So that's an important part. You want to kind of not just get the cheapest thing that's out there. Pillows and comforters. We've kind of touched on that a little bit. Comforters are, and again with COVID, and a lot of you are probably experiencing this as well. We have to clean everything in between each guest stay. So that includes comforters. Even if it doesn't look like that bed was used, we have that as an expense. And so you want to be conscious of that in the beginning. You don't want to get too many heavy comforters that are going to be very expensive to clean continuously. A lot of times we'll do kind of these lightweight blankets that are not as heavy and won't be as big of an expense. And so that's usually a good way to go. Dishes, glasses, pots, pans, utensils, we've kind of touched on that already as well. Again, just to restate the obvious, you want to make sure you have enough to accommodate the head count of your listing. So obviously, if it's a 1-bedroom and you're expecting no more than 2 people there, then you can prepare those counts based on no more than 2 people. And then obviously, if it's a 5-6 bedroom house, then you're going to have to accommodate those numbers as well. Then, the kind of the essentials that are provided: dish soap, coffee, creamer, sugar, waters. Each host does this a little differently. We like to kind of keep it simple. There's some people that provide snacks, different types of snacks, things like that. We just try to give them kind of the bare necessities as a starting point, and then they can hit the grocery store once they arrive. But at a bare minimum, I think it's good to kind of have a couple of bottles of water in the fridge. There's nothing worse than getting a flight delayed, or you're getting in late and all the stores are closed, and you don't even have a bare minimum cold bottle of water to drink. So that's a good thing to just kind of keep as a standard rule. Then the obvious, paper towels, toilet paper. We talked about kind of the shampoo and soaps and lotions. All that stuff, you want to have it initially stocked up so that your first few months of supply is there. And then you can, obviously you'll continue to maintain those supplies going forward as you get up and running. But it's important to kind of, get that started in the beginning. So I'm going to attempt to answer some of the questions. All right, so I just want to make sure I'm starting from where we left off. Okay, so is there a checklist available for the cleaners after they are done with the cleaning? We had an instance where the guest wasn't happy because the pots and pans were not properly cleaned. Would you expect that the cleaning to be a free cleaning since the cleaner didn't do a good job? Okay, so we do use checklists for the cleaners. And again, during COVID, obviously, we actually require them, even if it's in the cabinet. We require all the dishes and pots and pans to be washed in between every turn to avoid that very same issue. Even if it's not used and it sits in the cabinet for a month or so, it's going to get dusty. So we would actually, that would be a part of the general checklist for the cleaners to comply with. Now, expect the cleaning to be free since the cleaners didn't do a good job. So we, and like most folks, we have a separate cleaning company. So they're not a part of Diamond Edge Properties. They're a separate company altogether. And we treat them as a strategic partner. And so they get insight to every time we have a review, whether it's positive or negative. They get that information and they're constantly making adjustments to their operation. And so if it's something like what you're describing and the guest complains about the pots and pans not being properly cleaned, you're not going to have to, in my position, you're not going to have to credit that guest the full cleaning fee to make them happy, right? So if you're not going to have to go to that extreme, if it's not that, because it might be different. You might have 3 or 4 things that were wrong. It looks like they didn't sweep. There was food in the fridge, or there's a list of stuff that the cleaners missed. And yes, absolutely, I would hold them accountable to that and potentially have them go back out there to correct it. In addition to potentially not having that be deducted, or it would come out of their fee. So I hope that answered that question. Deborah's asking, do you have a towel linen source that you would recommend, good quality for reasonable dollars? So we've got our standard fare on towels for a long time has been Better Home and Gardens you can get them via Amazon or through Walmart. IKEA tends to have some good options as well. And it goes back to, like I talked about earlier, you can certainly buy a boatload of towels for cheap from Sam's or Costco, but they're going to be smaller, they're going to be thinner, and they're not going to make it past a couple of months before you have to replace them again. And so we found that the Better Home and Gardens are kind of a lot thicker, better quality. They stay fluffier longer. We actually get comments in the reviews about that. And so that's one of the ones that we are pretty consistent using. All right, so let's jump back into one of my favorite topics is the electronics, right? And so we've already talked about the internet service and the importance of that. Smart TVs and HD antennas. The electronic Wi-Fi locks, there's a lot of different options there. And the key is obviously, to be able to integrate directly with your channel manager or with the Airbnb platform, such that your codes will constantly change depending on whether it's a cleaner or maintenance crew. The code will only work for the guest period that they'll be there from check-in to check-out. And so that a lot of that stuff happens automatically in the background. It also gives you the ability to manage when things go wrong, right? So if somebody, and this can happen, somebody can check in, Airbnb can cancel their reservation and say it was because their credit card had a problem or it's fraud or something like that. And so you can immediately delete that person's access code if they have not gone in yet. And, it's just a good way to kind of be able to see what's going on, as well as tracking historical people coming and going and who's coming and going at what times. And so that's an important piece to do. I typically, as a general rule, and most of the time, it would be the main entryway to the home, with a few exceptions, but you're usually not going to want to do multiple Wi-Fi locks or electronic locks, unless it's a unique property. Like we do have properties where it's kind of a quadplex situation where you have multiple entryways. So you might want to have multiple entry points of the code being required. But other than that, if it's a standard home or a standard apartment or condo, you're typically good with getting at least one lock. Outdoor surveillance cameras, and obviously, as most of you know, we can't put cameras on the inside of the property. Your standard acceptable level is the outdoor surveillance. And again, there's a lot of different vendors there too that you can put in place, whether it's Nest or Ring or Vivint or Erglo. There's a lot of different options there. So whatever you're comfortable using. Because we have a lot of different properties, we typically tend to use Ring, which works well because you can, on one screen, see all the properties at once. And so, you can also use the solar cameras where its install is very easy. You're not rewiring or connecting up to power. You're basically finding to make sure that the solar panel can reach the sun every day. And that's all you really need to worry about. And so those are good. Smart thermostats are definitely something that you should try to implement for all the obvious reasons. You want to be able to set limits when guests are putting the temperature AC down to 58 or 60 degrees, and then all of a sudden they're calling, complaining because it's not working because the coils are frozen over. And so, you know, that smart thermostat gives you the ability to limit the temperature. It also allows you to obviously control it remotely, put in schedules. And so if the house has been sitting empty for 2 or 3 days and, you know, they're checking in that afternoon, part of your team can make sure that the AC has been on for several hours, so they don't walk in and immediately say the AC doesn't work, because it takes them a couple hours to cool down. So to be able to have that smart thermostat is definitely something that's good to have. One of the other things I don't have listed here is also kind of critical for what we do, and that's the noise detection device. And so I've kind of made that a standard addition now to our setups, not before, but I have only in certain cases would I do it before, but now it's a pretty standard thing. We've used 2 different ones, Noise Aware and Minute, M-I-N-U-T, and they both have their pros and cons. You know, so Noise Aware basically plugs in and looks more like kind of like some of those air fresheners that just plug in the wall and you kind of ignore it. The Minute is battery, rechargeable battery operated, and can be hung on the ceiling like a smoke detector. And the obvious headaches with something that needs to be recharged is why that, you know, the Noise Aware doesn't have that issue. It plugs right in the wall, you're good. And so the advantages of using the Minute, though, is it's got a couple of other features that Noise Aware does not. And so obviously, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's a noise detection device that you can put into the home. You can do outdoor or indoor, and it measures the level of sound. It doesn't record. And so what you can do is have different settings to notify you. You know, our quiet time is from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. And so I can have noise sensitivity levels at a lower level. If it's at 2 o'clock in the morning and there's something loud happening, it allows me to be proactive and reach out to the guests, ask them to make sure we just want to check everything's okay. And that way I'm not waiting for the neighbors to call and complain about a party or something like that going on. So it's very good to use for that purpose. Minute also doubles as a security alarm. And so it basically operates off of motion detection. And so you can also utilize that same device as a security device to turn on when the property's sitting empty for a long period of time or what have you, to be able to, without having a separate monitoring service. And then the other thing that the Minute does is it has the ability to measure the level of moisture. So if there's any mold issues, you can be alerted about that. Obviously it measures temperature as well. And they've had a recent addition, which I think is pretty cool, that does a count of Bluetooth devices to determine how many people are in the home. And so, excuse me, so it actually, you can set your levels. If it's a 4-bedroom house, most people have 2 or 3 devices. And if all of a sudden that number of devices on the network goes above a certain number, you know, why are there 20 or 30 people there? And they may not be making a lot of noise, but it'll give you an indication that there's a lot of people there that are unauthorized that should not be there. And again, gives you that ability to kind of be proactive. And so that's something that we've kind of shifted over to, and it's worked out well because of all those different things. Now, like I mentioned before, the headache is you have to make sure it gets charged typically once a month to make sure that either your cleaning staff or someone else on your team has that on their to-do list to make sure that those noise detection devices are charged on a regular basis. All right, so Hakeem is asking a question. What is your consulting fee once I am ready to set up my first unit, 1 to 2 rooms? So it depends on where you're located, Hakeem. We are right now in the Atlanta metro market as well as Tampa, Florida. And so our services, our hosting services, management services, setup services are currently in those two local markets. And so we do charge a standard staging and setup fee for our investor clients that range anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500, depending on the size of the property. And then, you know, if it's, so that includes everything, right? So we would come up with a full budget list of what that entails. And then we would basically handle the acquisition and set up to get the property ready for listing. So I hope that answered that question. Are there any other questions on electronics, or is anyone using any other type of electronics that I really didn't mention or touch on? No? Okay. All right. Thanks, Ingo. Says great tip with Minute. Deborah's asking if the property has multiple exterior doors, do you put digital lock in front and not provide keys? So that's a good question. I think what I tend to do is my standard is to have one of the main entry doors have the electronic lock. And we did, you know, so we would have keys for the other doors that are locked, but we would have them on site as a backup, okay? And so those would be, they're available if needed, but we tend not to provide those keys to the guests. So to avoid keys getting lost or, you know, things of that nature. So the main point of entry as a default should be the front door with electronic lock. And then you can definitely be able to have the other doors have locks on them and be secured, but only for emergency purposes have the keys kind of in a backup lockbox, so you don't have to deal with it as an issue. So Hakeem, at the end, I'm going to provide my contact info so you can reach out to me separately. I did answer your question, didn't realize you had to step away. But we are in the Atlanta metro market and Tampa, Florida market for the services that we provide. But I can go into more details with you later if you want to reach out to me when I give you the contact info. Let's see here, a few more questions. All right, so Anita was asking for my contact info as well. I'll give that at the end. All right, so Ingo got some quick feedback from his manager saying that with Minute, most unruly guests tend to unplug the router to cut cameras, other devices, signals to prevent them from being detected. So yes, that does happen. But what you can do is if the Wi-Fi is disconnected at a property, Minute will automatically notify you that the Wi-Fi signal has been taken down. And so that's one indication. And obviously if the camera gets shut down, you know that as well. And so you can be alarmed to something that might be potentially going wrong that way. Most of the time, if somebody, so that handles the unruly guest, right? But if you have someone that's throwing a party or having people come over that are not authorized and making noise, they're typically not gonna disconnect the Wi-Fi. The Minute, unlike the Noise Aware, the Minute cannot be unplugged. So it's battery operated and it's once it's turned on, it's on. And it's kind of inconspicuous on the ceiling as a smoke detector. So you can't really know that that's what it's doing. We do obviously, and we have to disclose in the listing description that you have noise detection devices, but I agree, if you are going to have some guests that are unruly, and you're not going to be able to fully protect against that, but you will at least get alerted to it when somebody unplugs something that shouldn't be unplugged. So I hope that answers that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to keep moving here and jump into another important part. Besides the property setup, I'm going to talk briefly about the team setup. You know, as most of you know, the cleaning service is really a big part, a very important part of this business. And so whether you have multiple different cleaners or different cleaning options that are experienced with doing short-term rentals and Airbnbs, that's something you want to make sure that you have set up and ready to go with your new listing. And so, you know, we typically, after the property is set up and fully staged and ready to go, we'll have our cleaners do an initial cleaning, get familiar with the property, and then we will get the professional pictures taken, and then we're off to the races. Get the listing set up, and we're hosting guests. And so you always want to make sure that you've got a follow-up process, whether it's within the cleaning organization or somebody on your team that basically checks and confirms that you have properties that are ready to go and ready to accept guests. Especially when you've got properties in the beginning that are getting set up. You know, when you go through your punch list items, and you might be having a handyman in there putting up blinds, you might be doing last minute things. You want to make sure that that property is ready. Handymen are great, but they tend to subconsciously not know or not remember that you're going to be hosting guests there at any minute. And so they're going to throw things in the garbage can. They're going to use the bathroom. So you always want to make sure that you've got some check and balance behind that. So maintenance folks, same thing there. You want to make sure you have that team set up ahead of time. We've got multiple different handymen that are on call. And so when people check in and it's a holiday weekend like we just had, you're going to need to have to pay a premium for folks to go out and check if things are going wrong. And so all that has to be set up in the beginning to make sure you've got those resources available to you. Customer service, guest communication. So, we have 24/7 guest communication, and, everything with the team, whether it's a cleaner, maintenance folks, or someone handling the guest communication, the whole priority is that guest experience and obtaining that 5-star review. And so that is kind of the key part of what we do, as far as everything that gets done is with that in mind, right? And so that includes the folks that are handling the guest communication. And so we utilize a couple of different tools to help keep all the team in place and communications. There's what's called a channel manager that you can get that integrates with Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, some of the other platforms. And you can build in automatic messaging. You can not only build in automatic messaging for the guests, but you can also build it directly within your team, right? So my cleaners get automatic messaging the day before somebody checks out as a reminder for them to go clean the next day. Maintenance can get punch list requests through the platform and things like that. So it's good to have those automated tools in place that can kind of help manage the process. All right, so let's see, Bobby just threw a question out there: how to persuade landlords into letting you Airbnb a unit. What's the first thing I should ask about? So typically, the very first thing you want to confirm, even before kind of developing a prospect list or going after that landlord, is to make sure that there's no association, like condos association or homeowners association. And then also that there's no local regulations that prohibit short-term rentals. So that's kind of the first thing you want to confirm. And you may not know that by somebody's ad trying to rent their place. So that is the first thing you'd want to try to confirm before spending too much time on it. All right, any questions on the team setup? Or anything that you guys are doing or experiencing that would be good to share? You know, unfortunately right now, like a lot of different industries, especially us that are experiencing growth, there's not a lot of people that want to work, right? And so you've got people that have been out during the pandemic, they've gotten their benefits and unemployment, and a lot of people are not that aggressively seeking work. So our cleaners are constantly looking for new cleaning staff to hire in Georgia and in Florida, same thing. Maintenance guys, we're still constantly replenishing those. And so the workforce is challenging right now for a lot of different industries, but it's also impacting us with short-term rentals too. So just something to be aware of. All right, so we've got a few more minutes left. Rather than doing a deeper dive on more of these kind of the team setup, are there any questions on setting up properties with what we've covered so far today? Anything else that you guys want to cover topic-wise? We can kind of open it up to other topics besides just property setup. Just throw it in the chat box, and we can got a few more minutes to handle a few more calls. A few more questions, I mean. So I really didn't do a full intro in the beginning. I'm with Diamond Edge Properties, and so I do host the BNB Investing group every month. We have a short-term rental business that's based here in Atlanta. We have right now around 37 listings total. We've expanded earlier this year into Tampa, Florida. So short-term rentals is our core business. We also do workshops occasionally locally, the kind of full day workshops that go through the basics of setting up properties, doing market analysis, and all the things involved with short-term rentals. And so if you guys ever want to need help with looking at market analysis or kind of helping to decide whether or not you want to do short-term rentals, we can help you with that as well. Like we've mentioned, we also do hosting services, staging and setup, and happy to help in those areas as well. Debbie had a question: what's the best place to look for a maintenance person? And so I mean, there's a lot of different options nowadays with the different platforms, like Thumbtack, for example, is a good resource. A lot of us have had some success with Craigslist, posting an ad for that, being very specific about what you're looking for. And so usually between those two sources, you can find some good options for that. So once again, if there's no other questions, I want to thank everybody for jumping on this month. Like I mentioned before, these are recorded. So if you missed part of this, or if you want to go back and look at some of the other months that we've covered different topics, each month we're going to kind of do a deeper dive on different aspects of the short-term rental industry and share best practices. So feel free to continue to tune in, and everybody have a good rest of the month, and keep safe, and we will see you next month. Thanks again, everybody, for jumping on. Take care.